Good evening, everyone. I would like to introduce myself for a start as David McKenzie, Beef and Sheep Director with Harborough, and I would like to welcome everyone to Harborough's webinar tonight, where we're going to focus on beef. I would like to thank everyone for attending. We've got people who have joined us from all across the UK, and very fortunate to have some international visitors who, attending tonight as well. So the aim for tonight is we're going to run this for an hour. We're going to spend the first half an hour getting to know our two people on this tonight, and then the second half will be an opportunity for everyone to ask questions, get involved, very much make this interactive, and make sure that if you have got a question that you log it with us, and we'll do our best to ask that question. And if we run out of time, we'll certainly come back and try and get the answers to you. So tonight, I am very fortunate to have two people on with me, both people who have a big influence in the UK beef production, both people I know well, both people I work with. The first is Richard Barbour. Welcome, Richard, here. And we've also Arwel Owen from Genus, who's attending as well. So I would like to make a start and ask Richard to give a bit of background of yourself, Richard, your family, and your farming business, please.
Thank you, David. I'm a fourth generation farmer based in southwest Scotland in Friesland, Galloway. Farming partnership with my father and my brother, albeit my brother works off farm most of the time in London. I'm married to Sarah, who's involved in the business, and I have two children, Lucy, who's 10, and Annie, who's 9, who would also probably like to say they're involved in the business. We farm mainly grassland, a combination of owner-occupied and rented. We've got a suckler herd, and we've always bought and finished store cattle. 10 years ago, we were milking cows on a fairly small scale by today's standards on a different farm. So we took the decision to put the dairy off, and we started rearing calves. So probably didn't really have that much of an idea what we were doing, but we were buying sort of 15 to 20 black and white calves every week of the year, mainly doing them as rosy veal. And from there, we've sort of developed a calf rearing enterprise through to finish. We're also involved in a AD project, Gas to Grid, in collaboration with our neighbouring dairy farmer, Mark Callender, which brings a new set of challenges, but definitely has huge potential. So that's enough from me at the moment.
Thank you, Richard. How long has your family been based at the farm you're at just now?
I would need to. I think actually, David, it's about 100 years in 2 years' time. Funnily enough, so 1923 or 1924. A
celebration to come then, Richard.
Potentially, David. Yes. Yeah.
And Arwel, would you like to give your background, please? What you do?
Yeah. I work for Genus ABS as a beef development manager. So really looking at the product development side of our business and working in projects that actually try and deliver a sustainable progeny so that we can actually give what the dairy farmer wants and takes it right through to what Richard wants and pass Richard to the processors and retailers. So really, truly trying to identify genetics that deliver for all parts of that supply chain. We farm a very small farm at home here, beef and sheep, hill farm in mid Wales. We basically run a pedigree a Charley herd, and then a commercial flock of sheep alongside that. But it's a very small enterprise, really. That's why I go out to work, David.
I know previously to COVID, Arwel, you were doing a lot of international travel. Is that still a part of your job, or how do you see that in the future?
I think that'll change through technology like this, but really there is huge opportunity in other parts of the world to adopt some of the early thinking about, genetics and what genetics can bring to people's businesses. And we've had huge opportunities in loads of countries. And through work, we trade with 78 countries out of the UK market with beef genetics. But we've been working quite hard over the last few years in Russia and in Kazakhstan, which has been immensely challenging. But post-COVID now is more challenging. But the opportunity in some of those countries are quite immense, to be honest with you.
Good. Well, the purpose of this evening is to really emphasise the importance that we all see when you take genetics, when you take nutrition, and you take management, and you try and link that three parts together. And what I'd like to do now is to ask Arwel to show a bit of the background of some of the work that's been bringing that three things together, and explain what you're seeing, Arwel, please.
Okay. Right, so we'll start. I only have a small set of slides, so bear with me just through these, but I hope it's of some interest in what we actually will be discussing as the evening moves on. So really, as I discussed in my opening, our primary customer is still the dairy farmer. So we must deliver on the calving age, gestation length, calf quality, something that Richard would want to pick up from that dairy farmer at a reasonable age of 50 kilos and really striving. And calf survivability is a big part of that today as we look at those indexes. So we've been measuring the calving ability of that cow at farm level for many a year now. And then we have developed over the last 5 years New Era Profit, where we actually are looking at the performance of those animals post leaving the dairy farm. So the rearers and finishers and how those carcasses hang up all the way through. So our relationship with Richard has been all about sharing data, all about actually trying to identify the best genetics to go back through his own supply chain. So that's been a massive part of our working over the last 4 or 5 years with Richard and identifying those genetics. So, as I've said before, it is about delivering something that has that calving ease for the dairy farmer. And really, we do have an index that actually supplies for that calf. So we do put a value on that index to that farm level. So there is a benefit on these sires to the dairy farmer, but there's also a benefit post that dairy farm to the supply chain like Richard has got himself. So we've focused our minds on 2 lines. So our T14 line and our T15 line. So the T14 line was started in 2014 with the Angus's. And then our T15 is our British Blue line. And those are the dominant breeds in our AI studs that we actually do the most business with in the UK market and Europe and globally as well. Angus's would be by far our largest sales globally. So just talking a little bit about our global, being a smart part of that global business, we can draw genetics in from all over the world. So North America is where our Angus nucleus has started from. We also work and take data from South America, and we also take the data from here in the UK. And really, we try and build genotypes on those animals. What do I mean by a genotype? We actually take tissue samples from those animals and understand what is the genetic makeup of that animal that actually will deliver in that supply chain after leaving the dairy farm. So this is a little bit about the process and how we actually do that. So at the start of that, you see the bulls. Then we measure the feed intake on those bulls. So we are measuring continually feed conversion. As we move into a new world of carbon footprint and measuring the carbon footprint in our beef stock, we've got to be able to understand how much those animals eat against how much they actually weigh. We measure back fat scans and intramuscular fat, so the flaking through the sirloin steaks, marbling, and the quality of that meat is becoming a massive, massive concern to retailers and processors, and a great opportunity for a company like us as a genetics provider that can actually align ourselves in that market. To do that, you've got to validate that. So we take a tremendous amount of tissue samples from cattle up and down the UK market. We work with partners such as Richard, and Richard shares that data on the slaughter data with us so that we can actually make some of that validation. Then we create a terminal index. So it's an F1 cross from a dairy cow. And we then try and identify the best genetics to go back into the system to create the next bulls so that we can actually collect the young sire semen off them and validate that, all that information back through again. But lastly on that slide is we actually validate the crossbred genetics as well. So today we have 1,000 animals on feed conversion bunkers.
Arwel, could I maybe just ask you at this point, Richard, your name was mentioned there as part of the data collection. What have you learned from this point?
Undoubtedly, the part genetics can play in delivering to the beef supply chain, I would say. When we first started with black and whites, and latterly, we started lifting beef cross calves after that. And really, there wasn't very much focus on this. It was all about fertility and calving age for the dairy farmer, which is obviously very important. But this is giving us the ability to take that the whole way through the chain, which should benefit everyone. So, yeah, it's massive, really.
Yeah. Okay. This is some data from our Beef in Focus T14 line in the US, and we just start to compare ourselves to what's out in the marketplace. And as you see from the graph on the left-hand side, the average cost per head for taking animals up to 400 pounds, there is a saving of $68 in there. And then when you actually look at the feed conversion, which we have over 4,000 animals on feed conversion bunkers in this Angus line. And as you can see, the Limousin's Angus, Beef in Focus, and then you get the T14 lines. Both those lines that we own are really starting to demonstrate a differentiation in the way it converts its food and actually lays down protein. And really, that combined index on the right-hand side graph is really just demonstrating some of the benefits it's bringing as additional profit. And when you start to add the number of animals through, that does really make a difference. So what have we done with genetics since 2016? Well, the nucleus herd has actually added $40 of more profit against the calf crop that was born in 2016 in our nucleus stock to 2020. And that's a phenomenal achievement. And we truly believe that we can actually go faster as we scale up this program. So moving to the T15 on the animals that we've killed out of our own program in the UK. Really, these are British blue animals, and it's about delivering consistency. And really, they are a match made in heaven with a Holstein cow. And as you can see from the data, 631 animals have done R or 4L, 18 were fat class 1 or 2, but actually there was 14 up in 5L as well, for whatever reason, just taken a little bit too far. But look at the confirmation, Ews and Rs all the way through out of those number of animals killed. We are really getting some phenomenal results from the project, and this is the first 1,000 animals that's going. So this is going to be an ongoing project with momentum, where we will be actually putting about 1,000 blue cross animals through this system every year. But what does that mean? Really, what it means is we've categorized our bull selection into 3 categories: Profit Max, Profit Plus, and Standard sires. Our Profit Max sires deliver £100 more through the supply chain than our Standard sires. Doesn't mean to say that our Standard sires does not deliver anything. Yes, they're phenomenally good. They are actually there at about £32 more. But really, there is a phenomenal difference between those two crops. And that is on 84 progenies gone through the Momentum program and 82 gone on the standard. So it's a reasonable benchmark in that. Sorry, I need to go back. But really, the big difference that we've found between our own standard sires and our Profit Max sires, there's a 30% increase in the grid. So really, they've moved from an average of 57% to actually 87% of the progeny hitting the sweet point on the Eurogrid, which excites us tremendously. You know, when you think about it, this only started in 2015, and we are 6 years into this project. At best, we're only 2 generations away from what we started from. But really, you're only just on the cusp of having that second generation through the system.
Okay.
But it's not all about what the Carcass is doing. It's really also about, you know, the days to slaughter. And really, we do have here, the average slaughter days has come down from 485 in the standard range to 458. That's 27 days less on farm. That's a really, really good story when we go to the market and we talk about carbon footprint, but that's a really, really good story for people like Richard that can actually increase the number of animals he puts through his system just by getting them off the farm that little bit sooner. And it's these little gains that we can make that can actually improve our profitability at farm level, which is always challenged. And then you go to the bottom bit of that scale, and that talks about average total feed intake. Really, on 70 animals, the total feed intake is 4,174 kilos in the Profit Max sires and 4,730 kilos on the standard sires. And that's a benefit of something like 11% difference in that benefit. And that is a phenomenal figure when you look at carbon footprinting and the costs at farm. Hence the difference between the two sires of nearly £77 just in feeding costs. So historically, we only looked at growth and carcass conformation. Our new index, which is going to be launched very shortly, is going to look at carcass, growth, and feed conversion. And this is hugely important how this index will develop. And as we collect more data, we will add other measures into this index to make these animals more profitable at farm level. And that will drive genetic progress. Today, we own the bull on the far right of the sire list, and we actually own the bulls on the far left and the far right. So really, this is a distribution curve of all the genetics that we've seen going through the system. And the bulls in red are Genus, the bulls in blue are our young bulls, and the bulls in grey are other bulls in the marketplace, natural service or whatever. So we do see that there is a huge difference in the marketplace. So it is quite important for us to select the right genetics for our index. This is one of the last slides, gentlemen. So really, what does it mean at farm level when you compare Profit Max sires to standard sires? And when you actually run through those figures, there is 16 sires in that Profit Max sires line with over 479 records. Records on feed efficiency is over 319. The carcass waste is 340, but really the dry matter intake at 703 against 723 and 753 in standard sires, and then the average daily live weight gain. But really, when you come down then to the carcass value and the cost of production, so the big gains are to be had in how we can actually measure that feed conversion and actually deliver that back into the system and change the genetics. So by taking the bottom end of our genetics, we will make natural progress into increasing the quality of the genetics that we deliver to our dairy farmers and to the supply chain. That's a whistle, David.
I know, thank you, Arwel. There's actually been a couple of questions, Arwel, that have come in that I would quite like to just maybe touch on just now, Arwel, if that's okay. One of the questions was, has the diet stayed the same while you've actually been able to reduce the days on farm? Has there been any changes nutritionally?
Well, we have 2 units, one on a TMR system, and the second unit that we started last July is on a full cereal system with yourselves on a maximal treated and barley system, quite intensive. We haven't killed any cattle out of that second unit at this point, but we're getting rather excited about what is happening on that second site. In daily live weight gain, in feed conversion, but also we're getting a nice finish on the cattle, which is hopefully going to come through when they start to kill those animals at abattoir level. But we'll have to wait for the data to talk for itself.
Yeah, no, good. Okay. Thank you, Arwel. I'd like to try and come in now, and Richard, I'd like to try and focus a little bit more on yourself and your own business. You mentioned that you were previously dairying, and then you went into rearing calves for a few years, but you've recently expanded that unit quite considerably. What drove you to do this, and what challenges have you faced?
As you know, David, as we all know, the beef industry probably was in a pretty bad place for a few years. And really, one of the driving forces was we were approached by a leading processor and retailer to do a supply chain. And the reason I mention that is I think that then gave us a bit of focus. There's probably dairy farmers at that point were under pressure to find a use for their calf, and we were able to fill that void, as were others as well. But it gave us focus. At that time, we realised that we were starting to realise the massive impact that genetics could play, not only for the dairy farmer in terms of fertility, calving ease, etc., but also further down the chain for ourselves. So, from when we started rearing calves, it's a very, very extremely challenging thing to get into, and it's definitely the most challenging thing I've ever done. And we've made a lot of mistakes, and we'll continue to do so. But at least at that point, it gives a bit of focus to, rather than just picking up whatever was in the market and not really knowing what it was doing. I think it gives a bit more focus, and we're very focused on Angus as a breed, and we're also doing some other work with Arwel and a hybrid breed, because just really excited about where genetics can take us. So does that answer your question?
It does. The question that springs to mind from that, you said that there's been learnings from it and you made mistakes. Was that mistakes in management, or was that mistakes within selecting livestock?
Both. Both, to be honest. I made lots of mistakes, both. Probably, you see it a little bit just now, but you go down the journey and you're very enthusiastic about it, and it's very easy to get caught up. And I have to say, a lot of dairy farmers we go to, the quality of the calves has increased dramatically. But when and I think it wasn't a bad thing starting out with black and whites, because if there was ever a challenge in rearing calves, it was probably with black and white bull calves. So it was probably a steep learning curve from that, but probably a good way to do it. So and management. But we're very fortunate. We've got very fortunate with a lot of the staff we employ, and we've one or two other places where we rear calves, and we've got some excellent people rearing calves. So. But it's an evolving thing all the time, and really, as Arwel's genetics improve and everyone's genetics improve, we need to continue to improve as well, because costs only tend to go one way, don't they? So.
Yeah, no, for comment. And Arwel, do you want to come in on that? What role did Genus play with Richard?
Basically, it's been a very good partnership from a Genus point of view, in the fact that we've identified what genetics actually are working for the dairy farmer. We work with a local representative to actually go and visit those farms and add local knowledge. As you know, I am not from Scotland, but really, we've developed that relationship between the dairy farmer. Richard had a lot of those relationships before we came along, but it's about making sure that we get the right genetics into that actually Richard's got a calf that thrives, that actually is 50 kilos and is healthy. We collect a lot of data now on calf survivability and really how those calves perform. And we've been very fortunate with the relationship we've had with Richard. He's been fully transparent on all the vaccination protocols and everything like that. And if we could link that to sires to actually demonstrate that is that the next part of the index where we will be able to say, well, calves from that bull will thrive here and they actually live better than calves from bull B or C or whatever.
Yeah.
So really, it's about sharing data, and it's about the trust that we have in that relationship between the dairy farmer, Richard, and ourselves, and making sure that we execute that to its best of its ability.
Don't forget the nutritional supplier there, Arwel, as well. Don't miss an opportunity.
Well, if you don't have the right nutrition, you'll never execute the genetics.
You saved yourself, Arwel. Thank you. Richard, another, because you're reliant on the supply from dairy farmers, and there's a number of dairy farmers on this tonight. What message would you give to a dairy farmer, A, that you're dealing with, and B, that you potentially could deal with to help in your model that you're working?
I think, David, it's a question of working for everyone. And long term. I mean, as I said, when we started having a real focus on what breed we wanted, the beef industry was a pretty bad place. It's in a better place now, but those hard times will come back. We all know that. We're all long enough in the tooth to have seen it, ups and downs, and I think it's about working for the long term and continually trying to improve. So. Yeah, it's got to work for every day. The first thing is you're never going to convince a dairy farmer to use any genetics if it doesn't get the cow and calf and it doesn't have a good gestation length and doesn't have an easy calving, because it's very hard to compensate a dairy farmer for a difficult calving. And I think there's work Genus have done. I've seen it from other genetics companies, that the effect a hard calving can have on the performance of a dairy cow. And a high-yielding dairy cow, there's a lot of costs going into it, but there's a lot of output out of it as well. So, it's a bit like a racing car, and you don't want anything to steer it off the track. So, yeah.
No, thank you. And I'm just conscious we'll keep moving on, because we've got quite a number of questions coming in, and I'd like to try and cover as many as possible. Another bit just to really touch on, Richard, is sustainability. It's been, the red meat industry has had a lot of negative press, and sustainability is a key thing for any business. What does that mean for you?
Well, I think sustainability and economics probably go hand in hand. The more efficient you are, the better it is for your bottom line, and that's all shown by Arwel slides. And I think that's pretty standard, whether you're dairying, you're feeding pigs, or you're growing cattle. The more sustainable you are, the better in a lot of cases it is for your pocket. The quicker we can grow those cattle. I'll temper that by saying we're very focused on grass. We in Southwest Scotland, we see grass as our greatest asset. So we've been trying to do a lot of mob grazing the last few years. We've still an awful lot to learn about it, but massive potential. you know, and that's really where we are. And I don't mean to. Obviously, you work for a feed company, David, but we finish cattle and cereals at the end. But you know, it needs to be very targeted for us. So it's yes, days to slaughter and everything are important for us, but it's the cost of getting there. It's not, you know, we could blow our brains out by feeding animals and grain all the way through and improve our days to slaughter, but it's about being efficient. And I think grass-fed beef or as a great story to tell for, you know, for the consumer. So
two questions I'll ask you both. Just take things in a little bit of a different direction for a wee minute before we go to a lot of the questions. But you know, both of you have been very successful within the industry, and we know that one of the challenges that we face in agriculture is the youth coming through and the younger people. And I would maybe start with yourself, Arwel, please. You know, what advice would you give youngsters starting out in agriculture today?
It's a very challenging industry to get started out, and you need a lot of financial backing if you're going to go into farming. And I'll be honest with you, yes, we are farming here, but I found it quite challenging over the years to generate enough cash to keep things going, and that's been always a big challenge over the last 20 odd years. You know, we're on a rented farm, and that's how we moved on. But I'll be honest with you, I think if you haven't got the passion and the drive, and I've been very fortunate that I've enjoyed what I've done. And working with people like Richard, seeing new technology, seeing new things coming into the marketplace, and seeing a massive opportunity to change something. And I felt at the around when we actually did that transition in 2014, 2015, I wish I was back at 21 again, where I could actually see this all the way through and really see it come to the end. And, you know, because the generation interval is so slow in the beef market, when you compare yourselves to lamb, sheep and pork and chickens, the generation interval is quick. You can make genetic gain. And we've got a sister company called PIC that works in the pigs. And when you actually listen to some of those guys and the way they actually bring genetics to the table and actually show that they can move that genetics forward at such a rapid way because of the generation interval, that's amazing. But we're definitely at the crest of a new wave and a new thought process, really.
Thanks, Arwel, for answering it. So honestly, it's I see you missed me off when you mentioned Richard, but I take nothing personal on that, Arwel, at all. Richard, I'd ask you the same question, Richard.
If you're young and enthusiastic, I'm going to say Arwel's not come and work for us. But no, just as Arwel said, enjoy it, listen to others, but embrace technology. So I think Arwel made a good point there about you know, it's difficult. Sometimes it's difficult to generate cash, and just going back to the dairy beef thing. You know, if you're working at scale, going back a few years, and I'm the first to admit we kind of got it horribly wrong when we first went into buying beef calves. You very quickly tie up an awful lot of cash, and it's a long time before you've get any income from it. And you know, it's without knowing the genetics and so on, and that's why you know, we can see progress now. We can see progress in that, but it's probably should have listened to others, myself, a bit more then. So,
well, it brings me on to the second question, and there's actually been a question that has come in that I could actually touch on, which and bring the two questions together. You know, Richard, if we start with yourself, you know, where do you see the future of the beef industry? And one of the sort of questions that came in was, you know, do you see the future of the beef industry being beef from dairy, and you know, is that at the expense of the demise of the suckler herd?
No, not at all. No, I think the future of the beef industry is quite bright. I mean, we all know suckler beef was very heavily subsidised and post sort of entry into the EU, which no doubt increased numbers of suckler cows, and we're guilty of that ourselves. So suckler cows are, we've got a suckler herd. Our focus on the suckler herds to improve efficiency. When I first started farming, I wouldn't be the only beef farmer to look back and say, the focus was on maximising the brown envelope that came in, but we're in a different place now. So we're very much about trying to improve the efficiency of our suckler cows, and perhaps the suckler cow may not be able to stand in concrete for X number of months of the year. We're trying to reduce costs by wintering quite a few of them outside. Soil types are a challenge with that at times, and yeah, the fact the dairy calf is essentially a byproduct of the dairy industry, but one with value. I think there's a place for both, David, and it's finding the balance. And I go back to what I said before. I think the future of the beef industry has got to be bright in the UK. We've already got a low carbon footprint compared with beef in the rest of the world. I think we're probably a long way off catching up on chickens and pigs in terms of converting grain into protein, but chickens and pigs can't process grass, and neither can humans. So as long as we keep that focus, we should be in a good place, I hope. So
good. No, thank you. And Arwel, do you want to give your thoughts on that question, please?
Sorry, remind me of the question. I was trying to.
Come on, Arwel. Really focus on Arwel on, where do you see the future of the beef industry, and what does that mean, Arwel, from dairy beef and suckler beef? So where do you see the future, and what does that look for our industry?
I'll start with the suckler beef. I truly believe the suckler beef cow has got a tremendous future in the UK market, but it has got to be, like Richard has just said, more of a cow that we can actually run on higher ground, that actually will deliver a well-grown calf that we can take to the market as efficiently as possible. And you go to some beef suckler producers in the UK market, and they do a tremendous job on some very, very rough farms that actually can deliver a real genuine difference to their bottom line at certain times of the year, and really do make a difference. But I think the suckler cow in certain parts of the country will be challenged on better ground, but I truly think there is an opportunity for the suckler cow on higher parts of the country.
Good. Okay. No, thank you, Arwel.
From where is the future in the beef industry? I truly believe it's never been more exciting. I think there is, as I said before, there is a crest of a wave of something new coming, and genetics is going to play a bigger part in that. And I'm truly proud to be part of that organisation that can actually bring that together. And being a farmer, I suppose I get a little bit overpassionate about it sometimes, because you do want to see it happen, because you can see what difference you can make to people's businesses.
Okay. Thank you for that. And what I'd like to try and move now to a series of questions that's come in, and I'd like to try and just keep working away. Now, one of the sort of first questions I'm delighted to see is for Richard. Richard, you use Rumitech, and it's a very, very straightforward question. Why do you use it?
Because you told me to. No. Why do we use it? It's Rumitech's proven to improve feed conversion efficiency, reduce methane emissions. We use it in conjunction with Maximon, which keeps our diet very simple. In the finishing phase, we reduces our reliance upon purchasing protein. So the two work very well together, and I'm a great believer in keeping things simple. So I like one product that's going to do the job. So Rumitech certainly delivers on that front from us.
Good. That's good to hear. Good to hear. Arwel, a question there is, do genetics perform better on cereal-based diets or forage-based diets, you find?
As I said, between the two farms that we have, until we kill the cattle at Warnham, it'll be the jury's out, but the indication is that we are seeing an unbelievable performance from our cereal-based diets at this point. So we have about 460 animals on a TMR system, and we have about 600 on a cereal-based diet, which we haven't started killing from yet. But the early signs look very encouraging. Good.
Okay. One question for Richard. Richard, you said you're working grass, quite important, but you shift your cattle to the east side of the country to finish. How do you manage the diets across there?
Just what I said before, David. So we probably do, going into this winter, it'll probably be 80 to 90% of our finishing happens. We're very fortunate to have a good relationship with a agribusiness through there that's large arable business. So we basically manage it by keeping it simple. You know, our ethos, if you like, is grow animals on a grass-based diet to a certain level, and then we convert them onto a cereal-based diet and try and keep that time to a minimum. So we use Maximon, and we send a premix from here. The Harborough bruiser goes to one of the farms where we are over there, and it bruises barley twice a week. Every fortnight. We send the premix through, and we just keep it very simple. If you keep things simple, then there's less can go wrong. So good. One quick one for you here, Arwel. Would you recommend using a T14 in a suckler herd?
Definitely. We can't validate that because we don't have that. But if it does genetic benefit for a dairy cow, why wouldn't it do the same on a beef suckler cow? I really would say that we have got to be, while we validate the genetics in there, we'd hopefully see the same performance out of that suckler cow.
Good. Okay. Richard, there's a question come in from a young chap that I know that's sitting out. And the question is, what 3 bits of advice would you give someone trying to set up their own supply chain from rearing to finishing?
3 bits of advice. 3 bits of advice. Identify people you can work with. We're very fortunate that when we started, I think we probably started with about 15 to 20 farmers, and I think bar one maybe we're still dealing with them all. And we've grown it probably from there. Second bit of advice is don't listen to every salesman that comes up the drive. I was probably a bit guilty of that as well. Third bit of advice, be very careful, because it's very easy very easy for the wheels to come off. Very easy. Very, very challenging. So, yeah. So.
Okay. No, thank you. There's another question for you, Richard. How is Richard going to get the scale and size into the Angus heifer to get a return on the carcass through them?
How are we going to get the size into Angus heifer? The mother's a Holstein, you've got to remember, so they tend to have a bit of scale about them. What we do is when we send them to finish in the East Coast, we're trialing with it a little bit. We have different weights for steers and heifers, so that we end up with a consistent product at the end of the day. A certain finishing weight. I'm not saying we've got that right yet. We maybe need to play about with it a little bit more, but generally, if the genetics are right, it's not too big a problem. you've just got to be careful. You've a bit of frame about the heifer first before you finish it. So we tend to send the heifers to the East Coast at a higher live weight than the steers, if you like.
Okay. So you are managing diets separately in that respect.
Yeah.
Question for yourself, Arwel. Now you'll have to be very diplomatic in your answer here. What is the future for the other beef breeds in the dairy market?
Yeah, it is a challenge. The reason that we've adopted the Angus and the British Blue, they were predominantly our largest part of our business by a considerable way. So there is plenty of opportunity. We sell nigh on 1 million doses of semen in the UK market, and 90% of that would go to beef on dairy across 17 different breeds. But really, the dominant breeds for us are the two that we've spoken about tonight. But there is huge opportunity for those other breeds in other markets. It's just identifying what you want to do. We just had a big customer on today trying to buy sexed Limousin semen to breed suckler replacements for a dairy herd, for a beef herd. And, it's just identifying the market as Richard had said, it's making sure that you've got an outlet for those calves and what you're doing with them and maximising the opportunity from your farm.
Arwel, I'll come to you with another question there. Will dairy cows with a higher feed efficiency produce beef progeny with higher efficiency?
You'd hope that some of those genetics would feed through, but today I'm not sure who is measuring feed efficiency in dairy cows, and including that, we actually, it's part of the PLI index, but it's not something that is actively measured here in the UK anyway.
Okay. Two questions to really put into one for Richard here. One of the questions, Richard, are you today producing more dairy beef than suckler beef? And taking that then forward, does suckler beef need to try and work harder to differentiate their product?
We probably are, David, but whether we've always finished more dairy beef may be the answer. We're in a heavy dairy area. Does the suckler cow need to differentiate its product? I think there's a risk in becoming a two-tier industry, if I'm brutally honest. I don't think that's going to do anyone a lot of favours in the long run. I don't know. You could argue that. Where's the argument in that? Is the argument that because suckler cows are grazing further up the hill, they're managing habitats and therefore environmentally friendly? But is the argument that dairy bred beef is from a cow that's producing X kilos of milk solids, so it's a byproduct, and you're not sustaining a cow? So I don't know. That's a very tricky one, and I think we want to be very careful with that. There's no reason why a suckler cow can't be a very efficient animal, and certainly we're still going to have sucklers anyway. I'm not, I was brought up with sucklers, so I don't see them disappearing entirely anytime soon, and nobody should think that the end is nigh for them. I don't think so, in my opinion.
I think a very good question to ask here that's come in. Is there any focus on marbling of fat and beef on the genetic side to try and improve meat quality? Arwel, if you could give us an answer to that, please.
Yes, there is a lot of discussion going down Stone at the minute and linking marbling to eating quality. And, there is a lot of data there that's starting to be collected. Because we're collecting data from people like Richard on who's the sire and the genetics behind it, it's linking all those things together. The more data we collect, the more wheels we can add to that index at the end of the day and try and deliver those eating quality pieces that we all need, and that consistent eating quality. It's being able to have that repeating experience of eating a good steak and not allowing people to have that same experience.
Okay, thank you, Arwel. Richard, a very, very straightforward questions come in for you. Bulls, steers, or heifers? Question mark.
Bulls, steers, or heifers? Question mark. For us, not bulls. As I say, I'm trying to be focused on growing at grass, and we're not in the cereal. The cereal market for us is, we buy a lot of cereals, don't get me wrong, but it's very difficult for us to grow cereals where we are. And yeah, grass is ours. So bulls are a tricky thing. We used to finish a lot of bulls from our suckler herd, and I've been consistently told the last 3 years that nobody wants bulls. So this year we kept less, and I wish I had the same number as we did, but that's the nature of cattle farming, isn't it? So yeah. So steers or heifers, yeah, both. I noticed there's a question there about beef sex semen. I don't know where that is. I think that's probably going to come in the future, but I don't know whether the consumer. Arwel, do you have a view on that? Is the consumer is the consumer going to accept that?
I'm not sure about the consumer angle, but from if we could deliver sexed male semen into the marketplace, especially on the Angus front, it would get over the challenges that the Angus heifer brings into the system occasionally, but at this point in time, it's not available, but it is on the horizon. There is development there that it's going to be very close to coming to the marketplace, but it'll have to deliver, Richard, on the calving ease, fertility on farm, all those other little bits that actually is fundamentally important, that it doesn't damage any of those other issues. So calving ease, if you're going all males, will come a big challenge. It will have to put more emphasis at that point. So will that inhibit performance of that animal afterwards? I'm not sure. We've got a lot of questions to answer before we actually go down that road.
Richard, there's a question come in. I think it must be from a dairy farmer. Do the higher genetic calves cost you more to buy?
Probably shouldn't they? Yeah, I think it's a fair point. Yeah, no, as the index develops, and I think, to be fair, they probably shouldn't they? Yeah, but the trouble is, we're now starting to see that ourselves, the better genetic merit, and it's but dairy farmers need to realise who keeps them for 18 months and who keeps them for 18 days. So, but
that's conversations you'll be having day to day, Richard, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Another question is coming for yourself, Richard, is with the cattle that you work on a contract basis, what kind of percentage is hitting spec for you? And do you have big financial penalties for cattle that are out of spec?
What percentage are hitting spec? I would say I think our in-spec's over 90%, improving all the time as we get more consistent product and probably understand the job better. The out-of-spec ones don't meet the standards, so they're basically the same as any other cattle. So you just get paid on the grid. But yeah, it's something as time goes on that with genetics and so on, it should be easier to do that, and nutrition. There's 3 parts: health, genetics, and nutrition, isn't there? In any cattle enterprise, that are probably the 3 most important aspects. So,
yeah, well, thanks for mentioning it, Richard, because obviously there hasn't been enough nutritional questions come in. So thanks for giving a little bit of balance there to it. Arwel, another question for yourself is, with a store cattle buyer who's looking to source T14 crossbred cattle, how does he do that?
How does he do that? Depends where he's based in the country, but he can do that. There's multiple sources of places where you can actually go and source. Richard sources direct, but there are companies out there that actually source calves for you and actually bring those to the farm, either reared or non-reared or whatever. So that there is multiple ways that you can actually bring those into the marketplace.
Okay, we'll just try and get a couple more in before we just close in the 5 minutes. But Richard, question here: does disease have a significant impact, and how do you mitigate the impact when buying from so many sources?
We have a big vaccination program, David, that we try to stick to religiously. With protocols, we try and batch. We try and manage them in batches, so separate airspaces. So once an airspace is filled in a maximum of 8 days, nothing's added to that until that lot of animals are reared. So yeah, various ways, to be honest, but it is a challenge. We're involved in a trial at the moment, using a thing called Smart Bell, which are a new form of fever tags, which potentially is very interesting in terms of highlighting disease. You know, respiratory disease is always the big challenge. So if we can highlight that earlier, reduce our antibiotic usage, reduce our carbon footprint by bringing the any animals that have suffered pneumonia or whatever, if we can improve the treatment of that and perhaps reduce the drugs we're using, then that's a big benefit as well. So I think there's potential there, and science is going to be there in the future that will help us improve, hopefully. So I keep telling Arwel we need to breed animals with bigger lungs. You know, I think cattle have a small lung capacity compared with other mammals. Am I right in saying that? And it's always a challenge. So.
Well, Richard, if I can ask you a last question here, and there is a small caveat to it. So if you could change one aspect of the industry for the future and future generations, what would it be? And please do not say reducing feed intake and feed bills and these type of things. So what would your lasting message be here, Richard?
So, goodness. If you're a dairy farmer, come and talk to us. What of my lasting? My goodness, I'm not used to giving out messages, David. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
If you could change one aspect of the industry for the future and for future generations, what would it be?
All right, okay. I think probably the one thing we don't want to do, and this comes as go back to a coupled support thing. I think that probably, and that comes as someone who probably received a fairly hefty Brown vote, but I don't think it does the industry any favours in the long run. We're probably miles behind other industries in some ways because we were held back by that. But against that, I can understand the reasons why that happened, post-war. So, yeah.
Anything to add to that, Arwel?
I'd say there is huge opportunities to come into the industry and actually bring some young skills in. As Richard had said, if you're enthusiastic and young, come and work for me. And really, that is the message that we need to have, because without the people around us that can the work alongside us, we're nobody. And I'm very fortunate to be part of a strong team in Genus, and really that is, you can't do these things without having good people around you. And it's the same people with Richard, and being involved in inspirational businesses that want to move on is actually very inspirational for myself and everything else.
Well, I would like to thank you both for your time. I'd like to thank you both for your honesty. I think you've answered everything really, really well, and I hope that all our people that have connected in tonight have enjoyed it, have taken something from it. From my own point of view, I think one of the key messages is that the importance of the end-to-end, people all involved in the whole chain, the trust, the sharing of information, that we all need each other. The genetics doesn't work without the nutrition, it doesn't work without the management, the health, and all these things do come together. So from a personal point of view, I would thank you for your time. I would thank you for what you're doing with sharing your message with the industry, and I think that we've got a very open forum here that we can follow up on anything that we haven't covered tonight, And as I said, I hope everyone's enjoyed tonight. So thank you to Richard, thank you to Arwel.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.